Welcome to Cards on the Table, a football referees podcast. My name is Joe Larkin, and I'm delighted today to be joined by my co-host Callum Jones and special guest Neil Mellor. Neil is a former professional footballer whose career spanned almost 10 years and included playing for Liverpool, West Ham, Wigan, Preston and Sheffield Wednesday. Neil is now a commentator and pundit. Neil, thanks for joining us.
Cheers, boys. Thanks for having me.
Neil, obviously welcome to the podcast. It's nice to have a footballer on to give a perspective from the football playing side. We'll start off with a few quick fire questions about your career. So, first of all, who's the best player you've played with?
Easy one for me to start with that. Because I came through at Liverpool, it was Steven Gerrard. And the reason he was the best player for me was because I think if you watch Steven Gerrard, you thought he was the best player on the pitch, wherever he played, because he had that intelligence, midfield, in a defensive role, in an attacking role. But I saw him every day on the training pitch, and he wanted to be the best every single day. Whatever the weather was, however he felt, he wanted to be the best. So he, for me, was definitely the best player.
And obviously we know that you linked up well with Stevie in a certain game against Olympiacos, and we'll come back to that later. Yeah. Another one, best manager you've played for?
Tough that one, because I liked a few for various reasons. Gerard Houllier, because he gave him a debut. He enabled me to live that dream of being a professional football player. Rafa Benitez, because he put me in the team for moments that I'll never forget, Olympiacos being one. But I think one of the most enjoyable managers for me was Alan Irvine. He came from Everton, so I wasn't supposed to like him because I'm at Liverpool, but he was a brilliant coach. He really was. And I really enjoyed my football, working under him, developed and played a lot under him.
We're going to go with best player you've played against.
Best player played against. It'd probably have to be Nesta. Remember in the centre-half? Decent centre-half, Nesta. I played against him once. It was a pre-season friendly at Anfield against Lazio. I think that's where he started his career. And it was like, wow, this kid's going to go on and be some defender. And he did. He went on to be one of the best defenders in the world. And I played about 20 minutes against him. And that was long enough to realise this kid's one of the best.
Now, you said to me yesterday that you didn't want to answer this question, but I'm going to put it on your toes anyway. Five-a-side team from your playing days.
Oh, I can't believe you've asked it me. Five-a-side. There's too many to pick from because I've got mates that, I'm a goalkeeper, love Jersey. I'd love to pick Jersey Dudek because of his save in Istanbul, the final. It was one of the best saves I've ever seen in extra time against Shevchenko. But I'm really good mates with Chris Kirkland. So if he watches this podcast, he'd be fuming if he's not in it.
I was going to say Kirky won't be happy if you don't pick Kirky in goal.
I could rotate them to half and half. Carragher, Hippier, some of the best defenders that I've ever seen. They were absolutely brilliant. I think in a five-a-side team, I'd go with the formation, 2 at the back, 1 in midfield and 1 goal hanger. So that would be my formation. Goal hanger, best finisher, maybe Michael Owen. I think he was unbelievable. I know he didn't leave on good terms at Liverpool, but he was an unbelievable finisher. Gerrard has to go in midfield as well. Could always bring Xabi Alonso off the bench, no problem with that one. I'm sure he won't mind sitting on the bench for Stevie.
Favourite stadium? That can be either playing or watching.
Anfield, without a doubt. It's something amazing to experience as a home player, to arrive at the ground knowing that you're a home player, to walk down the old tunnel with the This Is Anfield sign, narrow tunnel, which is obviously changed now, the main stand, and then coming out to the roar of the crowd, listening to You'll Never Walk Alone, and just experiencing moments at Anfield, which were just unbelievable, something I always wanted to experience. So Anfield, my favourite ground because of the memories.
Finally, favourite boots?
Copa Mundials. Copa. Cannot go wrong with the Copa. I could never get the tongue right on the Copa. Always, there you go. There you go. You can't go wrong with it. Do you know what? I used to wear Copas even when it was raining. I know they were mouldy because I never liked the World Cup because the studs just didn't really... I didn't like them with my feet, but the Copa mould, I would wear them in training and matches until they got holes in them. And next pair, that was me. Although when I scored the goal against Arsenal, I was wearing Preds, which I didn't really like, but I was having a dispute with Umbro and Adidas at the time. So there you go. So I blackened my boots for that one.
Yeah, so maybe it was the Preds that you can thank for the finish.
Yeah, well, I should have worn it more then. I shouldn't have been wearing the Copas.
Yeah.
So just to pick up on a few things you said there, Neil, I just found it interesting. What you said about Gerrard, and we all know what a good player he was. Do you think it was his mentality as well? Did you see that in him that sort of set him apart from the rest to take him to that next level?
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. I feel for me, Steven Gerrard is an unbelievable player, but his mentality is what has made him that one of the best ever for Liverpool. You know, one of the greatest players in Premier League history. And I always felt with Steven Gerrard, and a little bit like Jamie Carragher, they have the mentality to succeed at whatever they do. And okay, the professional football players, and whatever they're going to go and do after that, Steven Gerrard in management now, Jamie Carragher on the TV, they will always succeed because of the mentality which they have now. I see loads of young players coming through nowadays, outstanding ability, great talent, but if they don't have that mentality, they're not going to have the careers that they want.
Did you always know Steve you do well in management, Neil?
I wanted him to do well, but
Yeah. we all did.
I think in management, you think, a couple of bad results, and it could put him off. You know, I'm looking at so many managers, so many players that have gone into it and not being as good a manager as they were a player. Now, Steven Gerrard was one of the best ever players. And for him to go into management, how is he going to emulate his playing career? It's really difficult for him to achieve the highs that he did as a player. But he's doing well at Rangers. You know, he's won the league, which is fantastic. And who knows what his future holds in management. But for me, Gerrard was a winner. Always wanted to be a winner. And I'm sure he will be as a manager.
Can you see him ending up at Liverpool one day? Do you think that's the dream for a lot of fans?
He'll be back at Liverpool. He will be back at Liverpool in a role, whatever that is, whether that's manager one day, whether that's ambassador one day, whether that's chief exec or without a doubt one day, or even as a fan.
Yeah.
Because he will always have a place at Liverpool.
So I want to take you back. He had a really good career. He played for Brighton, and obviously you grew up around Manchester, and you started off at Man City.
Yeah.
You got released by City at 16, and then signed for Liverpool. How did it feel getting released by your boyhood club?
Yeah, it was difficult. My dad actually started at Man City, played for Norwich. The great Brian Clough signed him at Brighton down there, Jack Charlton at Sheffield Wednesday. So he played for some decent managers. And he was a big help for me in my career. I was at Man City as a young boy from the age of 10 to 16. And I even talk about this now with a keynote speech about resilience, because I was released at 16. And I wasn't expecting that, because I was a top goal scorer. I was the best player around in terms of school football at my age group. So it came as a big shock to me. But when I was released, I had the decision, what do you do? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Do you sulk, start blaming people for making that decision? Or do you roll your sleeves up and think, no, I'm not going to let them end my dream of being a professional football player? So that was my reaction. I said, I want to be a professional football player, and I'm going to hope that somebody else gives me that opportunity. Now, for me, I carried on my schooling. I ended up playing for England schoolboys a few months later, scored 5 goals in a game for England. And then pretty much every club in the country wanted me, including Man City, who just released me. So there's no way I was going back there, having them release me. And that was where Liverpool gave me that opportunity. And I thought, I didn't really know a lot about Liverpool. I knew they were a huge football club, but I'd never been there or experienced the club before. And I thought, wow, a club like Liverpool are interested. Let's go and have a go. So I went on trial there, and the rest was history. When you score the winner in your trial debut against Man United, that always helps. So that was a good start.
Just going back to the release from Man City, obviously you said it came as a shock. Did you really find out why that happened? If you obviously were performing so well on the pitch, etc., was there any underlying reasons as to why that happened?
Who knows? You know, the football managers, people who make those decisions, it is for whatever reason. It is for them. Whether we ever get told the truth, I don't know. It was just a case of, listen, we don't want you anymore. It was as blunt as that. And it was something that you have to accept and get on with. So I remember leaving the training ground, which was Platt Lane back then, in Moss Side, Manchester, and I was crying. I was 16. It's not easy to cry in front of your dad, who was driving me home. I was crying because I thought that could be the end of my dream of being a professional football player. I was devastated, especially a club that I'd supported and done really well. It wasn't a case of thinking, expected that to come. So it was a big shock. So the reaction's so important. The response is so important to setbacks, to adversity, which we all get to experience in life. And that was one that I had at 16.
When you started with 16, you were an absolute goal machine in the reserves. But it took you 6 years to make your debut. And am I right in saying that was against Ipswich in a League Cup game?
Yeah, I had a good record. I mean, when I first signed at Liverpool, I think I'd got 10 in 10 for the youth team, and then I got injured. I was out for 7 months with a back injury. So again, I'd had a setback there, a case of watching people go ahead of me in the pecking order. And again, I had a decision to make, response, reaction. It was a case of rolling my sleeves up, doing well in the Youth Cup the following year. I got the 9 goals, which is the second highest for Liverpool in Youth Cup history. Michael Owen's got the record 11. So that was my moment where I started to get noticed a lot more. The following season, I got 56 goals in all competitions for Liverpool youth teams. So that was again finally my chance to get down to the first team with Gerard Houllier, because at the time the first team and the academy was a really strained relationship, not like today with Jurgen and the academy. It's a really good relationship. Back then it was difficult, so I needed to get 56 goals to get noticed and get myself down there at the academy and down at Melwood. But eventually my debut, I was 20. Yeah, I mean, you look at young players now making debuts 17, 18, 19. I was 20 when I made my debut, and that was at Anfield against Ipswich. But a real proud night. My family were all there. I've got a picture on my office wall now of that day. Gerard Houllier gave me the opportunity to make my debut. And if I'm being honest, he should have probably dragged me off at half time. I was awful in that first half, but he kept me on. And shortly afterwards, I won a penalty, which again is another story in itself. I was on penalties, didn't get to take it because of El Hadj Diouf.
El Hadj Diouf went and suck it off, yeah.
El Hadj Diouf, yeah. Just don't get me started on that story. So he takes it, scores. It should have been my penalty, which had won. And then a few moments later, 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, knock it past him. Still to this day, I don't know how it's not gone in. Hit a blade of grass, hits the inside of the post, and the goalkeeper claims it in his hands. It was just one of those moments which should have been a goal on my debut, but wasn't. But it was still a very proud occasion.
At least Diouf stuck the penalty away. I think you'd have been more angry if he hit the post or stuck it over.
Well, we won the cup that year, and I've got a winner's medal from it because I ended up scoring in the semi-final that year.
Yeah, I was just about to say you scored in the semi against Sheffield United, and I was going to say, did you get a medal, which is good. Wait, did you feel like done by getting left out of the final? Were you in the squad?
Yeah. So back then it was 5 subs, so 16. Yeah. And the squad list was put up the day before the game because we're playing Manchester United, and 17 names were on it. I was on the list, 17. So I'm buzzing. So I'm part of the cup final squad. We go down the day before, and Houllier pulls me. He says, "Listen, I want you to be part of it, but you're not going to be on the bench. But if anyone gets ill overnight, you're going to be on the bench." And I was looking at him thinking, who's going to tell you that they're ill on the night of a cup final against Manchester United? Anyway, it wasn't to be in terms of getting changed, but I was very much part of the whole experience, the day before, the day of the game, in the changing rooms, everything like that. And yeah, I mean, when we won the Champions League against Spurs a couple of years ago, I think 30 players got a medal in the squad, whereas when we beat United that day, 17 got it, and I was one of those players. So proud because I played my part along the way, despite not playing the final.
But it wasn't until 2004 really when you broke into the Liverpool team under Rafa. There was a bit of an injury crisis. I think Cisse broke his leg against Blackburn the same game that Carragher did. I think Barros had a hamstring injury, and Luis Garcia got injured 2 minutes into the game at Monaco. That was a defeat. What can you remember about that game?
Saviola cheating. No, that's what I remember. I remember losing 1-0 and Saviola handballed it. And that was the goal. That was the only goal of the game.
Yeah, we're going to come on to referee decisions a bit later on. But
but I remember, I mean, you watch Carragher's reaction. As a player, you know if something wrong has happened on the pitch, and Saviola had handballed it. It scored the only goal. I scored a goal which was disallowed. I think it was offside, whatever it was, in the game. But that was my Champions League debut, and it was a case of walking off the pitch thinking we've been done there a bit unfairly.
So, you know, you've talked there about referee decisions. As a player, what makes a good referee?
I think for me, one of the biggest things that makes a good referee is communication. If your communication is approachable, I think if you're clear and you're talking to me, then that relationship's going to be helped. If you're not connected with me and you're switched off and you make it really distance between us and make it almost authoritative, your position, then that's going to make it more strained, that relationship. Because on the pitch, a player, I want to have a chat with you. I know if I've made a foul, say, sorry, ref. And I want you to say, okay, no problem. Make sure you don't do it next time. That's fine. Whereas if you go, you're in the book next time, or if you say it in a certain way, then that's going to have a reaction for me thinking, oh, I'm not having him today. Whereas if you say it in a way that goes, yeah, a bit naughty that one, and just calm down. Communication is so important and can be the difference between a player being wound up by every decision you make and accepting every decision you make. Now, for me, my dad played football and he was very clear with his advice. Play to the referee's whistle. You cannot change the referee's decision and get on with it. But as we know, VAR has changed all of that. You can argue every decision you want now with VAR.
Yeah.
So just on that, Neil, obviously you played domestically and in Europe as well. Did you notice much difference between the refereeing styles when you were perhaps playing in European competitions compared to the Premier League or EFL?
I think the biggest difference was the opposition. They did things that didn't happen in the Premier League. Things like pinching, poking, things like gamesmanship, which we weren't used to, just to try and get a reaction, knowing that the slightest contact they would make the most of. And, a referee seeing me push a player to the floor and him throwing himself on the floor is more common in Europe. And that was something that we had to learn very quickly. I remember being red carded, actually. My only time in my career. It was in a pre-season game for Liverpool against Galatasaray. And I'd only been on the pitch 2 minutes. Uli had sent me on to get an equalising goal. And it was just when the new law came in about tackling from behind. So the lad played it back to the keeper and I'm late for a challenge. I'd expect the referee to give a foul. I think a yellow card would probably have been harsh, but he's come straight out with a red card, and you're thinking that just wouldn't happen in the domestic game. But again, I felt as though the European refs were a little bit quicker to dish out those cards.
So leading up to in the week during the Champions League or between the league, would the manager ever talk with the referee and how to approach it?
Do you know what? When I was at Preston under Alan Irvine, he had an assistant manager called Rob Kelly. He's actually a manager of Barrow in League Two at the moment. And every single game, he would say, lads, the referee's name is Peter today. Okay, make sure you know the referee's name is Peter and you get him on your side, because he will give you a decision at some point. If you're, Peter, come on, Peter, give me a decision. And again, we're talking about communication. We're talking about being approachable, that connection. If you can have some kind of a relationship like that the officials are only human, and if you can treat them with the respect by calling them the name or talking to them properly, you might get a decision which they're thinking, not sure. Oh, okay, yeah, he's been all right. That was my belief anyway. If I can get the ref on side, there'll be one moment in the game where he might give me a decision.
So, as Neil Mellor, how do you think referees would see you as a player on the pitch? Would they think this guy, we're going to be all right today, Neil's playing, or is it, oh God, I'm going to have one on my hands today with Neil up front? How do you think referees would describe you as a player to deal with?
Well, do you know what? I was never booked once for dissent because, again, I knew I couldn't argue with the referee's decision. I would say, ref, come on, hey, next time. I'd always be honest and treat them with respect. I'd never swear at them, calling them this or that, because, they've given the decision, I couldn't change it. So referees would look at me and go, he's going to be honest, he's going to be competitive. I might have to have a word with him a few times, but I know he's going to accept my decisions, which again, we talk about VAR now. As a player, I would accept every decision the referee would say. I'd say, ref, I think you've got that wrong, but I'd say it in a way that he would know next time he might give me the next one. Now, if I was a player, I'd be telling him to check VAR. I'd stop the game as players, as bad as that sounds, and say, go and check that. You've got that wrong. And that's the problem with VAR for me.
Which one of your teammates do you think were the most difficult to referee?
Oh, where do you want to start with that list? I mean, we were all different, of course, but I don't want to start throwing anyone under the bus with that one. I think the yellow cards would probably speak for itself, and even red cards.
Yeah. But do you think as a player, maybe not just you yourself, do you think players do understand the laws of the game? Are the players who go away when the law changes come out in the summer and go and study them, or is that something that you, as players, you feel like you neglect?
We always had a referee, at Liverpool and at Preston, come in at the start of pre-season just to go over the rule changes, and that was clear to me as an English player. But I always looked at the foreign players, certainly at Liverpool, and thought, have you got a clue what they're saying there? Because the language, honestly, the language could be a problem for some of those players. And the difference was there wasn't many rule changes back then. We all knew what the rules were. I feel as though the rules are changing that often these days. It's quite confusing. It's quite hard to actually keep up with what's going on. I remember finishing my career and I bumped into it. I was like, what's that? Because I'd never even heard of it. And it was, if the defender touches the ball and you're offside, you're now onside. I was like, so the defender's only touching the ball because he can see I'm going to get the ball, but I'm offside. But because he touches it, I'm onside. But he wouldn't touch it if I wasn't there. So again, there's so many rules that were confusing to me. Well, that doesn't make sense because the defender doesn't play the ball if I'm not stood in an offside position. But again, they're the rules. But it's up to the players to learn and to understand what their job is in terms of the rules of the game they play. But most clubs get a referee in only once, not more than what from my memory, to explain the rules.
So just in terms of VAR, we're going to come on to VAR after, but in terms of, you mentioned there about the rules and the laws of the game, as a pundit now, looking at the game that we have today, if you could change one law currently within football that's not VAR related, what would it be and why? Offside. As a centre forward, I was educated, bend my run, just make sure that my legs are behind the defender and I'm onside. So I'd arc my run in a way that my feet would be onside, but do you know what? My shoulder, my head might be offside. Am I gaining an advantage like that? No, I don't believe I am. So for me, offside should be from the feet. And if you want to start looking at armpits, shirts, ear, whatever, it feels unfair to me. As a centre forward, if I can bend my run and look across the line with my feet, then I'm not gaining an advantage. Now, if my feet is ahead of the defender, that's a different sort of advantage. But I don't believe it's an advantage to have my shoulder or my ear ahead of the defender. So that's the one I would change, the offside, and make it quite simple. Any part of your feet further ahead, then that for me is offside.
How do you think you'd have coped with VAR as a player? Obviously, football's changed that much over the last 15 years. And you look at the way the referees were when you were making your Premier League debut. When you think back, the referees back then have been your likes of your Dermot Gallagher's, I think potentially Phil Dowds, people like that. You look at the way you see likes of Anthony Taylor, Michael Oliver. The sort of mould for a Premier League referee now is that they have to look like a player. How can you see refereeing changing, and how would you cope with VAR now if you were playing now?
Do you know what? The reason I wanted to play football was because I loved it. I loved scoring a goal, and I loved the feeling of it hitting the back of the net. Now, I think the enjoyment's gone out of the game because of VAR. That's what I honestly believe. I'm seeing players, fans, not even celebrate a goal going in. One of the hardest things to do, and one of the greatest moments in the game for emotion, for passion. And I'm thinking, might be disallowed. So I scored a goal against Arsenal, last minute winning goal, a goal that a lot of Liverpool fans will remember, a moment that certainly was huge in my life. If VAR was about, I'd be thinking, what are they going to disallow it for? So for me, it's ruined that passion, which is what football is all about to me. And I don't like VAR. It hasn't helped the game. Goal line technology has helped the game because it's instant, straight away onto the referee's watch. VAR is not instant. takes too long. There's too many delays. Too many subjective calls are going to VAR. A referee will give his honest decision. We have to accept it. Play to the whistle. Get on with it. Those sort of things. Now, we can argue every single decision that a referee gives, and majority are subjective. A referee will always get a decision wrong. The human, it's an honest mistake, but you have to get on with it. You can't keep questioning every decision because it's ruining the game of football. For me, VAR was brought in for those blatant errors that everybody can see. Now there could be 2 of them a season. There's not 5 or 6 a game. I'm talking about a punch off the ball where the officials haven't seen it or whatever, and you're thinking, well, that's a red card offence, or perhaps something like penalties. They're subjective. Yes, okay, the referee might have missed it, but it's a subjective decision. It's not a decision that 100 people out of 100 would say that is the most obvious decision, and that is what VAR, in my opinion, was brought in to change those decisions. But it's just been used far too often, and unless it's used for what I thought it was, once, twice a season sort of moments, it's going to continue to ruin the game. Offsides, drawing lines, all this sort of stuff. It's really frustrating to watch.
So, just we were talking before, and I said I'm a Coventry City fan. We're in the Championship, and I personally think that's one of the best leagues in the world in terms of competitiveness and excitement, because season after season you don't know how it's going to end. So, as a pundit, what do you enjoy watching more and commentating on or reporting on, the EFL or the Premier League in terms
of EFL without a doubt, because it's real, it's passionate. I know that when a decision's made, it's accepted. When a goal goes in, if the flag isn't up, it's a goal. And I love that passion, because that's what football is to me. Now with the Premier League, like I say, there's goals going in, and I'm thinking, well, what are they going to disallow it for? And that's not how football should be, in my opinion. So EFL, without a doubt, is much more enjoyable to watch for that reason. The passion, the love of the game is there.
So obviously you watch a lot of football through levels, and we talk about Premier League and the EFL. What do you think the biggest difference is between the refereeing, between the Premier League, Championship, and obviously League 1 and 2?
I feel as though I actually feel sorry for the referees in the Premier League, because I feel as though they are over-reliant on using technology now, whereas they're not trusting themselves, which is why they're at the Premier League, because they're good referees. They're actually thinking, I can use that backup there of VAR. I'm not going to give that decision because I can check that. So again, technology hasn't helped them in that respect. Listen, referees make mistakes, and I think players understand that. But because of technology, it's too easy to argue those decisions now, and that doesn't help the referee. Yes, the referees, in my opinion, are better in the Premier League, and the lower down you get, obviously the standard decreases slightly. If a referee allows the game to flow, if the communication's good, if they're approachable, that is a referee that I like to watch. If they want to make it all about them, if they want to keep blowing the whistle all the time and breaking it up and just for niggly things that they don't need to be blowing up, they're the ones that can ruin a game of football that I watch.
So in terms of obviously your role in the media, you probably talk about referees a lot on there, and it's brought up a lot in terms of post-match press conferences, etc. nowadays. Do you think that the media has become slightly obsessed with referees in the way they're spoke about so often?
You just broke up there. Can you say that again? Is that right?
Yeah. So do you think the media has become slightly obsessed with referees and how they're spoken about so often, before the game, after the game, in the game? Referees are the centre of attention in quite a lot of the media nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's more maybe social media than perhaps the media side of things. I feel as though because of VAR, it enables every decision to be questioned, and that's why the referees perhaps are getting more scrutiny than they've ever had before. We always used to say, "Oh, how's the referee not seeing that as a penalty?" But it was accepted, and I remember the phrase that we never hear anymore: "It will even itself out over a season." Never really truly believed that. I felt as though some seasons you got a little bit lucky with decisions, and some seasons you didn't. Look luck is something you always need in a game of football if you want to achieve anything. And for me, we're trying to make the game perfect, which is just unrealistic to have. But in terms of the media, we'll always talk about the referees because they're making decisions. But social media doesn't help that, and that's probably more of a problem than perhaps the main core media.
So do you think it'd be positive if the communications were broadcast like they are in rugby league, the likes of the VAR conversations or just the general flow of the game? Do you think that would be helpful for everyone in football?
Not really, no. In my opinion, if the referee's given a decision, he's given the decision. You can't change it. I feel as though if you're going to start hearing his conversation, it's even more reason to argue against it, because you're saying, well, what's it? How can he come to that conclusion? For me, I think that would open up even more criticism because the game is watched a lot more than the rugby league stuff. So for me, I'm happy with the referee talking, communicating, but don't think we need to hear it broadcast. I've heard it in Australia. I've seen that, and I know a few referees have had a lot of positive praise for that. But for me, I wouldn't be bothered if it wasn't brought in.
So would you be objecting to referees coming out after the game and explaining decisions?
Again, well, how can you change it? The referee's made the decision. It's like, well, what you want me to explain? Why I've made that decision? You're only going to wind me up even more. So it's happened. You can't change it. I've heard people saying they want to hear referees explain it, but it's they have their assessor. They're the person they have to speak to. They're the one who, if they're not up to the job, they're the ones who will be told by the assessor. It's not up to the fans to tell the referee he's not up to it, because they're assessed by the people who know the game.
I think we're always taught that, when you go out and referee, ideally you want to get in, get the game done, walk off. You don't want to be the centre of attention. You've alluded to that, but players don't like it either. I feel like we're in a day and age now where refereeing's spoken more about than the actual game. You think about, like, on Sky, on BT, the stringent analysis of, and we are helping ourselves by putting lines across the pitch and going into minute detail of armpits and everything else. Do you think that the way the media is portraying referees, that's now filtering down to the grassroots and adding fuel to the fire in terms of referee abuse?
Do you know what? I watch a lot of grassroots football, and the problem is the parents on the sidelines for the grassroots. It really is. I spoke to one 18-year-old referee. I was like, after the game, I said, "Look, ref, I thought you did really well there. I thought you controlled the game." And it's not often I see such good refereeing. I said, "I really enjoyed the refereeing. Well done today." He's like, "Oh, thanks, because last week didn't go so well." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because one of the dads came on the pitch and hit him." I was like, "What?" That's what happened, because he didn't like what decision had been given. But this kid, a week after, was still out there, still had the passion to carry on it, and he was a good referee. He could have been put off by that, by some absolute idiot coming on the pitch at grassroots level because he didn't agree. Now, I watch grassroots and I hear parents shouting, "Snap him." 10-year-old kids saying that about 10-year-old kids. It's really, really difficult to watch. So I can imagine as a referee, it's even more difficult. I refereed one game at grassroots. Didn't have a problem on the sideline because I was constantly talking to the players. I was like, "Come on, keep going." I think the team was losing 3, and I was like, "Come on, keep going. You can get yourself a goal, get back into it. Good tackle, that play on, the ball's there to be won fair." So if you're talking to the players constantly, you're not going to get the reaction of the parents on the sideline and also the little kids mouthing it off. And if they do, I'll just tell the manager to sub him and say, "Bring him on in a few minutes' time, let him cool down," that sort of thing. But but that's grassroots. I don't think lockdowns helped. And they've not been able to go to football games, a lot of supporters, and they're taking it out on the kids, the referees, the grassroots side of things, trying to get the release that way. But I feel for a lot of the grassroots referees, definitely.
Yeah, I think you've just spoke there about how important communication. I think at a grassroots, especially at kids football, they're going through a football education. So I always say to the lads who are coming through doing the mini soccer, if they take a foul throwing, then just let them take it again. They're trying to learn, they're trying to navigate their way through, and I think the best referees are always the ones who use the common sense, and you've alluded to it there. And do you ever think, you finished your career at 29, would you have ever considered going down the referee pathway if the opportunity came about?
Yeah, I've got a certificate somewhere. Level 2 referee. I definitely did a level 2. I don't know how good that makes me, whether I could do a grassroots game, I don't know. But I definitely did level 2 when I was a young player coming through at Liverpool, just to get an understanding about being in that position as a referee. I wouldn't have minded maybe doing a little bit of refereeing, but my body couldn't handle it. I cannot run about around the football pitch. Found it hard enough playing, never mind running about as a referee. But I know mates that thought about doing it. One, Richard Chaplow, who's a mate of mine at Preston, thought, yeah, I fancied that because he was a really fit boy, but just the process put him off. And he was like, can't be bothered with all this. It was a very long process. And you felt as though a player who'd had 10, 12, 15 years experience in a game would be able to be sort of maybe fast-tracked, but it wasn't the case. It was a long, long process, which I think puts a lot of players off.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what we've heard of other people, isn't it, Cal, in terms of they'd love to do it, but it could take 7-10 years, and by that point, would their body still be at a level where they could operate at the highest level? Probably not. I mean,
16 years, they say the average it is to get to the top flight. I know lads who are at the top flight, and it's took them longer. And there is there's an initiative at the moment that the FA have redesigned for academy players, people coming out the game. And if you're 32 finishing your career, it takes you 16 years. 48. Do you believe that that people should be in the 40s refereeing in the Premier League, moving towards 50 when all the players are, when a player in the prime is between 25 and 28? So what's your opinion on sort of streamlining it to maybe be able to get people through the system quicker?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm not bothered about the age of a referee. I want him to be fit, keep up with play, of course, yeah. But I want his communication to be good. So it's no good having a 20-year-old who's maybe too timid around senior players. I want someone who's confident enough to say this is how it is, and be approachable in that way, which perhaps more experienced referees can certainly be. I don't know if referees need more help from players. We're having this conversation now. I'm an ex-player. You boys are officials. I see no problem with someone, a referee, being around players and just asking their advice, because the amount of times as a player, I know how to win a penalty. I know how to be cute with a referee, and I know I can sort of say, ref, I've given you a decision to make there, but I know how to win penalties. And I think referees sometimes don't understand the mentality of a player just to be able to do things that maybe they're not aware of, and maybe it's quite easy for a player to catch a referee out in that sense. I'm not saying it's cheating. What I'm saying is there's ways that players know how to sort of manipulate the lack of game knowledge of certain referees and win decisions that can sometimes be big moments.
So just on that, Neil, in terms of VAR, is run out of Stockley Park and it's run by purely match officials. Do you think having someone like yourself or another ex-pro who's played at great level of the game would benefit the way VAR operates in terms of maybe then penalty decisions or whatever it may be, because you'll get that different perspective?
No, I think after a game, I think it certainly helps with a player, but VAR is too time consuming. I don't want a discussion with an ex-player and a referee taking even longer, where he's saying, well, this is that, and he's going, that's that, and it's a subjective decision for a penalty. If you get rid of VAR, all I want is something which tells me that where we all miss a big incident, like I say, someone getting hit off the ball, a massive incident where everyone can see, and you're thinking, how has the referee missed that? Penalties will always be subjective, and we don't need VAR for that. Because yes, there's contact. I've missed it. you've missed the decision. Okay, it happens. It's always happened before. You have to sort of get on with that. That's that little bit of luck, which sometimes you might need in a game. But I'm not having a discussion with an ex-player and a referee taking even longer for VAR. But I like the idea of an ex-player talking to referees after a game and saying, this is what I saw. Now, you can tell me the rules, but I'm telling you, he's playing for that because he's being clever in that sense.
I think you've alluded to it there. I mean, the levels that myself and Joe are at, we're just moving through the semi-professional pyramid, and there's when I'm on the line in the Conference North, and there's players who've played in the Football League, who the seasoned pros are, and sometimes you've got to pick a few of them to lean on, and there's a few of them who you need to stay well clear of, because they, as you've said, they know all the dark arts. And I think Joey Barton came out last week and said that that's why more footballers need to get into the game. So do you think there needs to be more of a harmonious relationship between players and referees, so that we can all sort of help each other for the good of the game?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's too disconnected. It's sort of you and us, when it should be all together to try and help the game. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the referee saying, what did you think of that? Rather than thinking, because he's a referee, he can't ask questions because he has to know everything. Listen, we all don't know everything. We need help. We all need that help at times. And for a player, I'm quite happy to lean on referees. I sometimes text a few ex-referees and ask them their opinion about things, because I'm thinking, I can't understand that, but you might be able to help me. And it should be the same for referees, just to ask players to say, what's going on here? I don't understand what's going on. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's I think you summed it up perfectly, to be honest. We're going to dip back into your career now, and you've talked about the goal against Arsenal. I just want to ask you, when that strike hit your foot, I was at the game and I was sat in the main stand, and I can still remember, I think I was only 9, I can remember your body check Vieira, and the ball's been either Sol Campbell or Cole Torre, and you've hit it with your right foot and it's gone into the bottom right-hand corner of Lehman. Did you just feel like running into the cop? Because I can remember it with the baggy red kit, both arms in the air. Did you feel like just hurdling and just going running around the ground like a madman?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because before every season, we have the safety officer from Anfield that came in to talk to us at the training ground. He said, whatever you do not jump into the crowd. Whatever happens, never jump into the crowd. But when you score a goal, it's so hard to control that emotion. I mean, you're saying you're in the main stand. My mum and dad were there, my brother, sisters, they were all in the main stand, the old main stand as well. A few had left the game because it was like the 91st minute, whatever it was injury time. And no, when it scored, I knew it was in the back of the net. And what I wanted to do was just share the moment with the fans. You know, it was like a Roy the Rovers moment, wanting to stand there, take it all in, and just enjoy that celebration as the fans were jumping up and down in delight. As that moment for me was scoring the winning goal, it was everything I'd always dreamed of doing, really. And I wanted to stay there forever. I was devastated I had to walk back to the halfway line, but it was a personal great moment, which is nice to look back on. Even 15 years, maybe even longer since. And you're saying you're 9, you remember that goal. So I can't sit here now and say I've played 400-500 games for Liverpool, which I'd love to have done, and I've won this, I've won that. But I've got the odd moment which fans still remember. I was in this bar in Tokyo watching the game, or whatever. I was a Coventry fan, and I remember it. You weren't even probably born, Joe, but it was it was a long time ago. But it was nice to have a moment.
And then obviously the week later, it was the game against the Olympiacos, where you come on as a sub, didn't you? About 10 minutes to go, you scored one and set a famous goal up for Stevie. What can you remember about that game?
I remember being fuming with Rafa. Thinking, it was 1-0 at half time. Rivaldo had scored a free kick at the Cop end. Olympiacos were a good side. They were top of the group that night. And we had to score 3 goals second half because they'd beat us 1-0 in the group earlier on at their place. And I remember at half time thinking, you need a goal. I'm on the bench, get me on. And I'm jogging on the spot. I'm staring at Rafa the whole time, 15 minutes, get me on. get me on. I'm knackered by the end of the half-time because I'm thinking I'm jogging on the spot. He ends up bringing Cinnamon Pongola on, and I'm thinking, I can score goals more than him. What are you doing bringing him on? Anyway, the second half starts. Pongola scores after 2 minutes. Brilliant. What a genius. Rafa is bringing him on instead of me. But I just spent the whole second half running up and down, looking at the game, looking at Rafa, thinking, when's he going to bring me on? When's he going to bring me on? It eventually brought me on. I get the goal, 2-1. And then obviously Stevie scores the wonder goal, and I think the commentary helps me. So I've heard it years after. I mean, Jamie Carragher on the left wing, what was he doing there in the first place? And then because Martin Tyler sort of says, lovely cushioned header, I think that's something that there was a TikTok made of it, which even now, many years on, is still remembered. So I'm grateful for the commentary, and obviously Stevie's finish, which was unbelievable.
So did you get a nice big pat on the back off Rafa, or was it just a cold response? I've listened to a lot of interviews about people's relationships with Rafa. What was your relationship like with him?
He only lives a mile away, so I've got to be careful in case he's watching this. He might go knock on my door. But he was a great manager. He would distance himself from all that sort of affection. You know, you look at Jurgen today, and as a player, as a fan, you'd love a hug off Jurgen, wouldn't you? Just the manager's having me with a hug. Whereas Rafa, it was a case of, I think after the Arsenal game, he looked at me in the changing room, just put his thumb up. That was it. It was a case of that. Yeah. And that was as good as a big hug off Jurgen in terms of the comparison. But yeah, he wasn't like that, but he was a top coach, Rafa Benitez.
So do you think, you said you didn't play as many games as you did for Liverpool? Do you think that education, learning from Gerard Houllier, who sort of revolutionised Liverpool, was the first foreign manager coming in, and then obviously Rafa came in. Do you think that education made you a better player when you then moved on?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah, Gerard changed it all because it was the start of continental players coming over. It was a change of the diet as well. I remember when I was at Melwood, even though Houllier was there was, after training, you'd go in the canteen, there'd be bottles of Coke, Fanta, Sprite, Snickers, Mars bars, Twixes. It was like happy days. But then soon it was all gone, to the point under Rafa where you weren't even allowed butter on your toast. Pretty much, it was a case of that's how much the game had changed with the diet side of things, which obviously was for the better. No more going out drinking as often as perhaps they used to back in the day. But also the tactical side of the game really changed, and I thought Rafa was massive on that. He was he helped educate me a lot with and without the ball, which helped me through my career. But unfortunately, I had to leave Liverpool. Injuries played its part. I can make excuses, of course I can, but it was what it was. I got to experience Liverpool for that brief period, which I'll always be grateful for.
Obviously, you've talked about the moments there, and you were involved in the squad when Istanbul happened. Obviously, you weren't involved in that squad, but you were involved in the celebrations. I'd like you to tell the listeners about the story about someone's Champions League medal that you acquired.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there was 18 in the squad that day. So they flew separately to us, and everybody else. There's only about 10 of us that weren't involved. Injuries. I was injured. I think Morientes was cup tied. Pellegrini as well, the Southampton manager recently. Cup tied. So we all flew separately. Chris Kirkland got to the game, watched the game. Like most Liverpool fans, we were there as fans in our tracksuits. Half time comes 3-0 down. You're thinking, I'd probably take 3-1, 4-1 now, because my mates are getting embarrassed, getting humiliated in the biggest game of their careers, their lives. We've all been looking forward to it. And this is horrible. It was painful to watch. Second half, as we know, was the greatest ever comeback in football terms, greatest showing of resilience, whatever you want to say. It was unbelievable. So to try and get out on the pitch was a job, to get on the pitch, because there were 69,000 fans inside the stadium. And I reckon 60,000 were Liverpool fans. There wasn't many AC Milan fans that night. But the problem was we were all in our trackies trying to get on the pitch, and the stewards were all in Istanbul, Turkish stewards. They didn't know any different. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know my goal against Arsenal. So we're all trying to blag our way onto the pitch, like all Liverpool fans were, just to try and celebrate with the. We had no one to get us on, so we needed Morientes, who'd won the Champions League 3 times before, to say to the steward, "Listen, I'm Fernando Morientes." And the steward obviously didn't believe him because, everyone's going to try and blag a story to get on. So he got his passport out and showed this steward, who ended up hugging him like Jurgen would hug a player now, hugging Morientes, saying, "Oh, you can come on." But then Morientes made sure we all got onto the pitch. So we got onto the pitch. So when Stevie lifts the trophy at the end, which is the celebration, I'm on the podium, and I've got pictures in my room of being in the background when Stevie's lifting the trophy. And then everyone walks off the podium to go around the ground. And at that point, everyone was just like, "Oh, this is amazing." And we looked at the podium, and there was 2 or 3 medals that had been left behind. So Pellegrini, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. It was Pellegrini or Pellegrino, you know what I mean? Big centre half, Southampton manager recently. And he picks these medals up and goes, "Do you want one of them?" So I was like, "Yeah, I'll have one of them, no problem." But I was thinking it was a winner's medal. Looked at it, it was a silver medal. So it turns out that AC Milan had left a few of their losers, runners-up medals, whatever you want to call it, behind. So I've actually got Maldini's or Shevchenko's runners-up medal that year. Still waiting for a text message or a phone call off. He can have it back. He can have it back. There's no doubt about that. But I've still got it to this day. It's at my mum and dad's house.
And obviously, when you left Liverpool, you moved on to Wigan, Preston, Sheffield Wednesday. How did you find the transition of moving from a club who were playing in the Champions League to who were playing in the Championship?
Do you know what? I was just happy to be playing football. It's something that I'd always dreamed of doing. After the injury I'd had at Liverpool, the surgeon said I'd had a 50-50 chance of playing football again. So it was just a case, just enjoy what's left. And that was it for me. So I enjoyed my time at Preston. Yes, I wasn't playing with Gerrard, Carrier, Alonso, those players anymore. Wasn't in front of 50,000 fans anymore. But I was still getting the buzz of playing, scoring goals and having moments at Preston, Sheffield Wednesday, Wigan. Again, Wigan was a deal was agreed for whatever it was, over £1 million to sign. Got injured there. West Ham was an interesting one, but injuries sort of followed me about. So it was a case of just enjoying what was left of my career. So to get to 29, I felt as I was quite fortunate with some of the injuries I had to last that long.
Yeah, and 29 in football terms, it's early in terms of retirement. So how did you end up transitioning into the media? Did you ever think about going into coaching, or was it always going to be punditry and commentary for you?
I think when people go to school, they go to college, not sure what they're going to do, go to university. And that's a little bit like it in football. Don't know what I'm going to do, go to coaching. Everyone does coaching. But for me, I quite enjoyed the media side of things. And at the end of my career, I was writing in the Matchday programme. I had 2 pages in that. I was working for local radio, started a degree in media as well. So I knew that was where I wanted to go down, that route, whereas a lot of players aren't sure. And again, because I've had setbacks along the way with injuries, with being released at Man City, my mentality was a case of not going to feel sorry for myself, because a bit like a referee's decision, I can't change what's happened. I know we're saying about VAR, you can, but back then it was a case of I can't change what the referee's done. I can't change my career's ended by this injury. So I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm not going to dwell on that. I've got to think about what I can do. Right, okay, what can I do? Okay, I can achieve. I can succeed at something else, which was media. So I put all my attention, all my efforts into that rather than dwelling on. And I've seen players feel sorry for themselves having come out of the game. And they've lost everything. They've become bankrupt, divorced, depressed, and from losing that identity of being a professional football player, the structure in the life, the money, the adulation, all that, it's very, very difficult if you're thinking about all the things you can't do. So my mentality was, got to think, I can only think about what I can do. Yeah, great to have had those moments, but I can't do that anymore. Got to think about what I can do.
That's a good way of thinking about it. I think everyone, especially referees, everyone will go through times where you've got to have a bit of resilience. You'll go through tough patches. As a player, what's the one bit of advice you give to people who are going to go through negative stages in their career? how do you bounce back from setbacks?
Yeah, well, I do a keynote speech on resilience, and what that is it's a decision. I have a picture which to show everybody, and I say, there you go. The setbacks happened, the adversities happened. It could be an injury, it could be a mistake that you've made, it could be rejection, whatever it might be. And then you've got a decision to make. What is your belief going to be? What's your reaction going to be? What's your response? How are you going to interpret that adversity? And that will be what dictates your outcome. So if you want to feel sorry for yourself, if you want to sulk, you want to moan, you want to blame somebody else, thinking about what you can't do, give up, those sort of beliefs, emotions, then you're not going to have positive outcomes. So I will say to a player, think about what you can do. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Want to bounce back, want to fight to continue, want to be determined, persistent, those sorts of things, and not give up. And that will give you more chance of having those positive outcomes. And for me, it's a simple decision. It's difficult because whenever we experience something challenging, a setback, it's not easy. But you have to focus on that side of the picture, which is the one I show, rather than dwelling on what the sulking, the moaning, the blaming sort of thing, which will bring negative outcomes.
I think that's a lovely bit for us to finish on there in terms of what you've just said there. So Neil, thanks for your time today. Good luck with the media and any games you've got for the rest of the season. And we'll be sure to keep an eye out for you sticking up for the referees in future.
Good luck to you boys with the refereeing. I wish you well. And if you can, just carry on refereeing. Don't worry about that silly VAR.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Neil, it's been a pleasure, and it's been really humbling to speak about your career. Look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully around. Cheers, pal.
Cheers for that.